Hello and welcome to another Cave of Chronicles real-time storytelling, when we get the ideas from you in chat and put together a story. Hi Legion, here is the first of my regular, oh, and there's Tootie, the other ones of my regular assistants, Pains. You come up or they come up with some kind of story, and I do my best to put it all together and add it all up to bring something out at the end. If you've just come in and you only want the story, it will start in about 10 minutes. So if you skip straight to the 12-minute part of the stream or thereabouts, you will find it. It'll get tidied up for that in the morning. Equally, remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, then go to all if you want to know when we release. And we also have a join button down below if you want to join our Eldritch Order and come see us on Discord. And of course you can just stay here and get involved. All of that said, let's get on with the real fun. Okay guys, I'm scared after last week. What have you got for me this week? This is where Legion and Tootie usually come up with a whole bunch of crazy things that somehow I then have to try and mash together into a functional story. And of course, each time I succeed, the next one gets crazier. Anything? Human, the alien spy pretending to be a human door-to-door salesman who uses it to eat people. My wife says you have weird brains. I think she's being generous. Okay, that gives me something remarkably sane to use. Tootie, are you feeling okay? Bongo the vampire doggo. And there it goes. Not certain how easily I can mince those two together. Sorry, I muted it so that you didn't hear me drinking. Yeah, alien, spy, vampire dog and flying killer goldfish zombies. You're trying to kill me. Easy. One day I've got to find a way to get you on here, Tootie, and we'll, or both of you even better, and then everyone else can come up with similar ideas for you to produce. I might get banned from YouTube if I tried that. Shark duck. half shark, half duck, or monster. Okay, I've got something. So, location, time period, side characters, what's actually happening besides the alien spy going from door to door. Ghost train person gets on and it becomes a real ghost train. 1920s Boston. I can manage that. Okay. Okay, so the alien's going to visit their daughter. Parents might make it or the train might claim them. 2 minutes. Though I might be tweaking your time zone. I'll keep it Boston, but I might jump it forward by about 20 years, Tootie. There's always got to be a Nutkins. Not certain I'll get Nutkins into this one. Hello, whoever just joined. There's less than a minute, then we'll actually start the story. I hope you enjoy it. If you look at chat, you will see all of the crazy stuff that's been thrown at me. Please have sympathy. Nutkins Railway Services. Thanks, Tootie. I'll need it. And with that, the train rattled on, slowly pushing through the countryside, moving up the east coast of England. It was a long journey. The change at Grantham had taken longer than thought, but now they were on the branch, heading up eventually to Skegness, but stopping first at their destination in Boston. The train was old and uncomfortable. It bounced on the rails. Being winter, the sun had already gone down and it was dark outside. There was a strange chill in the air, but it seemed to alternate, almost as though the chill was moving through the carriage. Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs sat watching, nervous, on their way to see their daughter, young Reese. But she hadn't contacted, she hadn't written. Was she there? Again, as they looked at each other talking, a chill went across them. Looking across the train, they could see a strange man sat there holding a large case. Glasses, strangely pallid skin, and an unusual look to his eye. Hat down. They weren't certain what he was, who he was, but he unnerved them. That wasn't what was making the cold. It was almost as though the cold was trying to cling to them and grasp them. And still the train rattled on through the dark Lincolnshire countryside. Gradually, time passed. The feelings ebbed, and it was almost as though they could hear a warning telling them not to go, to stay back. But it was too late now, and they wanted to know what was up with young Reese. Pulling in, the doors opened, and their eyes met the strange person coming out from Boston train station. They walked down across onto the platform, then up the stairs, over the long open air stairway to the other side to head out. The call of the train's whistle went as it slowly proceeded up to disappear, up, off, towards its final destination. They could see the large tower, the flat, strange steeple of the Stump, Boston's large church. But they were not here for church. They were here for their daughter. They headed out onto the street, turned right, walking slowly down, heading towards where they knew her small house was. Something unnerved them as they looked over their shoulder. They could see the man with his briefcase walking towards them. They accelerated, pausing briefly as they saw the large sign for the Ritz Cinema. Looking at the bizarre array: Bongo, the vampire doggo, flying killer goldfish zombies, Duckman, shark duck, half shark, half duck, all monster. The movies looked awful, but ignoring the cinema, they moved on. The man behind them seemed to gain, and in the cold, a fog was raising. They looked and saw a shop and stopped to pick up a local paper. Looking at the Boston Standard, they flicked through, and strangely, there seemed to be lots of reports of disappearances. This worried them. They didn't recognize the name, but they were all young women of a similar age to their daughter. Moving on, getting out their key, they found her little house. Again, the strange man had got closer and closer. They opened the door quickly, stepped in, slamming it shut before he could get to them, closing it and sliding on the extra chain for a bit of extra security. Then called out to their daughter. Silence. They'd have thought she would have been home by this time. The wind started to get up. Rain came down. Bits of hail hit the roof of the old house. They were chilled. They looked round. The fire was cold. It didn't seem to have been lit for several days. They got some coal, got some tinders, struck the fire and lit it, looking at each other. They moved round cooling, but there were no signs. No clothes were missing. The only thing that had gone was their V's. They went and waited, sat on the sofa. The clock ticked slowly on, slowly past. Time moved, and gradually they both fell asleep. When they woke, something was strange. The world was strange and misty. They were still in the house, but it wasn't right. Walking round, they got up. There seemed a solid fog outside, but again they could hear the distant whistle of the train in the distance. But they'd been on the last train. Moving, again they looked around the house. They went to look in her bedroom. Mrs. Jacobs screamed as the walls were red, blood seeming to trickle down the sides. Looking at each other, they looked horrified. The floor was turning to maggots, bones. One of the bones turned a skull looking at them, pivoting on a broken spine, opening its mouth in a soundless scream, yet still the scream echoed through their heads. They ran out of the room, heading towards the bathroom. At least it had a lock. They opened the door, looked in, and as they looked in the mirror, all they could see was the face of the man that had been following them. But there was something wrong with the look of his face. It was distorted. He blinked, and when he blinked, his eyes came across sideways. It was almost as though there was a serpent-like slit. Then a long forked tongue seemed to flick out of his mouth. Running back, slamming the door, screaming again, they headed for the front door, pulling it. The door seemed sharp. They pulled it open and ran out into the fog on the street. turning up, running back towards the train station. The church. Maybe the church would be safe, but even through the fog, they couldn't see the massive, flat tower. They stopped seeing the railway station, but kept going into the town square, on through, past the old department store. Running, the park was on the left, the post office was there, but they had no interest as they ran out towards the river and stopped coming to the water. Looking over, nothing. They were out of town now. This wasn't the main river. They'd crossed that long ago. This was one of the smaller dikes that provided all of the required excess of the water from the Lincolnshire Fens to keep the lands dry. But there was nothing behind them. They sat down on the bridge, breathing heavily, looking across at the moored Foster, seeing the windmill in the distance. But no, they couldn't stay. Something called them back. Something drew them back. A figure seemed to come out of the fog, backing up, worried that it was the strange man. They saw their daughter. But their daughter was translucent, almost like a ghost. They backed again. She raised her hand and nodded. Mama, Father, don't be scared. It's me. This is the only way I can speak to you. I tried on the train, but you couldn't hear me. And he was there, watching, staring. Beware, beware that man. He's dangerous. He is not of this earth. He has abilities that you couldn't understand. He can sap your strength. He can burn your very flesh. And then he will eat it. Don't let him in if he comes. Please, don't. There's nothing you can do for me. I'm gone. But you must leave this cursed town, leave this cursed place. Head back, head home. When you wake from this dream, wait till morning, run for the train station and leave. There was a noise in the background. She opened her eyes, looked, screamed, and ran into the distance. Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs didn't know what to do, didn't know what to make of this, but they had to do something. They were there holding on to each other. They could feel the fog seeping into their bones. And then they could hear the slow footsteps of solid leather shoes, heavy, on the road coming towards them. They got up. It was coming from out of town this time. They looked at each other and ran back into the town, through the town centre, looking up the statue of Taverner in the square of the church. They moved into the churchyard, banging on the huge doors of the great cathedral-like edifice. Looking, seeing they couldn't go much further because the main river flowed, the tide was in and the tide was high, almost breaking the banks at the bottom of the church. Looking, they ran out over a small little footbridge, straight over, back round the back of the cinema and down, running in towards the town, out round the side, heading back to the little house where hopefully they could wake up. Through the door, slamming it behind them. As the door slammed, they both shook awake. There was another noise. The door banged again. It was a hammering, a heavy thudding on the door. They looked at each other. They were back in the front room. They headed up to the front stairs window. Upstairs, looked out one of the windows, and there the man was there banging. Behind him, lots of similarly looking people, others looking mindless and twisted. Looking down with surprise, several had 6 fingers on their hands, 5 fingers and a thumb. You always heard of Lincolnshire and the Fens mutants, but they never realised it could possibly be true. They were there, shaking. More came up. There were heavy smacks against the door. As it banged, they ran down, out the back, just as there was a shattering sound as the front door caved in. Running out, they went through the back garden, over the back, and started running towards town, coming from several of the side roads were large, similarly looking people walking slowly towards them. All they could do was run. Back into town, the church. They had to be able to get into the church. The doors were heavy, but the church was their saviour. The church would be their safe place. Over the river, in, through the town, up, banging heavily on the church. The door opened, and a small balding man looked over and smiled at them. "What's up, my children? Please, please, let us in. They're coming. We seek sanctuary." He smiled at them. Come, tell me. Here." Pushed the door closed, and the door shut. The heavy clank of the lock. "Come." He led to the large pews. Moonlight coming through the ornate stained glass windows. "Take a seat. What's wrong?" Our daughter said here." "Your daughter? Calm. You're safe here." They breathed. Again, they seemed to feel the cold brush over them. Our daughter said he ate. Your daughter said he ate? How could your daughter say anything?" "They said he was..." The priest smiled. The rear vestry door opened, and the funny man walked out. They looked and screamed. The priest looked back. "They say you ate their daughter." The man smiled. "She was lovely. Maybe they will be as good. Maturity ages the meat, gives nicer flavours." They looked at the priest wondering, then noticed as he blinked, his eyes came across from the sides. They screamed, and he smiled, spitting a brief globule that splattered slightly on their face. They backed up, pulling over, but as they did, their faces began to burn. They could feel it, and as they burnt, and as the pain came, they got weaker and weaker, pushing back towards the large black wall. The priest moved forward, his friend beside them. Soon their strength will be gone. Then we can feast. It's so much better when they're still alive and you can hear them scream. The screams started as their jaws seemed to unhinge and they looked over them. But however much they screamed, the thick walls of the church prevented any sound from escaping. Next day, passengers on the train between Skegness and Grantham all were complaining of the cold draughts, many of them, that seemed to flitter up and down the carriages. How was that? I think I got it all. Some of it easier than others. Did I miss anything? You don't make it easy for me. It was great fun. Anyone else who came and viewed, thank you. Any future viewers, thank you. Please, if you liked it, click like, comment and tell me what you thought in the comments below. If you really liked it, click the join button, come and join us in the Eldritch Order on Discord. If you want to get more of these, we have weekly releases that are a longer pre-recorded format that come out every Saturday at 5 o'clock UK time. These are Sunday at 6 o'clock and happen most weeks, but not every week because it's live and sometimes I have things I need to do. So if you click subscribe, the bell, and then select all, that will make sure you're notified when any of these start. If you don't like things like YouTube, we also have a Patreon, same name. You can go there and join that way. And if you don't join and just want to come along and enjoy, that's fine too. Please come and join in chat. The more people that put the ideas forward, the better. And it might give me a way to temper the two maniacs that are my two main contributors at the moment. That all said, farewell for now, and see you at the next one.